So we'll start the next session, and I hope someone is ready.
Yeah, so we basically stopped at the end of the last paragraph of page 103. Shall I read after the paragraph or
Yes, no problem. Yeah.
to solve once and for all the problem of the indeterminate points? He approaches the Buddha and challenges him to give a categorical answers to those points on the threat of his leaving the order. He even makes bold to say that the Buddha should be honest enough to confess his ignorance instead of evading the issues. Here then we have an open revolt in the ranks against the Buddha's attitude. But it was not the Buddha who gave in. He rejoined in a sterner fashion, retorting whether there was any prior agreement between him and Malunkyaputta that he would declare those 10 points if the latter entered the order. Malunkyaputta confessed that there was not, and the Buddha humbled him with the words, Evam Sante Mogapurisa, Ko Santo Kam Pachachikasi. This being
Pachachikasi.
This being so, foolish man, who are you that you are disvowing? A very unkind and agnostic attitude indeed on the part of a teacher who professes to be compassionate and fully enlightened, one might be tempted to conclude. But the Buddha goes on. He goes on to explain to Malunkyaputta that even if one were to declare that one would not live the holy life under him until he answered those 10 points, he would never give in. Now comes a parable which, as in so many other instances, embodies a deep truth. It gives a tragic instance of a man shot with a poisoned arrow who refuses to allow the surgeon to treat him until he gets the answers to a series of delirious questions regarding the man who shot him, and the bow and the arrow used. The obstinate man is prepared even to sacrifice for his curiosity aside the 10 points because they are irrelevant to the attainment of Nibbana, and advises Malunkyaputta to treat the 10 indeterminates as indeterminates and the determined points as so determined. These latter refer to the Four Noble Truths. We are told at the end of the sutta that Malunkyaputta was satisfied with his exhortation, but not so the dialectician who valued the critical spirit of inquiry above everything else. To him, the compassionate residence of the surgeon and the pragmatic reasons given by him were not at all acceptable. So he pressed on regardless, and by the time he returned to the peerless surgeon, Sallakatto Anuttaro, burdened with dosaries of exhaustive as well as exhausting critical inquiry into the culprit, the bow, and the arrow, his condition was well nigh critical. He had used the dialectical principle in such rigor that it shook the very pragmatic and ethical foundations of Buddhism. The value and wisdom of the Buddha's silence thus came to be proved in retrospect. The approach shows lack of appreciation of the vital link, dukkha, that obtains between anicca and anatta. The early Buddhist attitude was to realize the imperfections of language and logic by observing the internal and external conflict it brought about. This is extremely clear in the Atthakavagga of the Sutta Nipata. It was not considered necessary to counter every possible thesis with an antithesis, or to turn every theory inside out by the reductio ad absurdum method, merely as an exercise in dialectics, thereby adding to the conflict. It took the more radical attitude of grasping the general principle involved, namely that of suffering, which provides the true impetus for the spiritual endeavor to transcend all theories by eradicating the subjective bias. From the foregoing, it should be clear.
Someone, one moment. Yeah. So let me we'll simplify what's really going on here. So basically, it is not that every question that Buddha answered, there are particularly 10 questions that he didn't answer. So they are called Avyakatavattu, or in English translated as indeterminate points. So for example, whether the Arahant lives after the death, or he does not live or does not exist after the death, or he exists as well as does not exist after the death. He neither exists nor none exist after the death. Now these are 4 questions that Buddha didn't answer. Similarly, whether the world is eternal, the world is not eternal, whether the world is eternal and not eternal. So likewise, related to the world, there are these kind of different questions that still Buddha didn't answer. Then Tanjivam, Tansaridam, or Anyan Jivam, Anyan Saridam. So whether the life is the kind of the body, or the body is the life, or like that, different questions are there. Altogether, there are 10 questions, typically referred as the Avyakatavattu, and Buddha didn't answer those. So the simile given here is very informative. So when someone is hit by an arrow, so there may be his teacher, his companions, his friends who want to quickly take him to the surgeon and to quickly remedy the issue. But this fellow, if he is asking, okay, who hit the arrow, and what is the made of the arrow? So what is the poison included in the arrow? What is the length of the arrow? What is the diameter of the arrow? What is the metal used to make the tip of the arrow? So like that, so many questions if he keep asking, and he's putting a kind of a condition, okay, without I getting proper answer to all these, I am not allowing the surgeon to do the job. So then we can all understand, actually this is not a kind of a advisable way, or a wise method to apply, because ultimately by the time that all these questions are answered, this fellow will die, because he won't have a long time. So the questions are very critical, questions are very, very difficult, and by the time that someone may find out all those solutions or the answers to those questions and answer that, so this person might die. So giving that simile, Buddha says, similarly, all these 10 questions are completely irrelevant to the problem or the question that we have, that we are suffering and there is ongoing suffering, and there is a path leading to suffering, and we have to develop that path. So there's a fair amount of work we also have to do, fair amount of practice that we have to undertake. But if you spend more time in answering these type of questions, then it's a waste of time. So that is the argument that Buddha is talking here. And as mentioned in this paragraph, Venerable Malunke Putta, on the other hand, had a different idea. Okay, I need to get the answers. I should get these answers, otherwise I am going to disrobe. So this, with such a adamant type of attitude, he approached the Buddha. But as you saw already, heard about what has happened, so Buddha still didn't answer. Buddha still didn't want to answer any of those. Rather, he very much like deny answering them, and he wanted to convince Venerable Malunke Putta, okay, these are the questions that I have answered, these are the questions that I have kept aside. So therefore, certain questions that Buddha have categorically answered, those are very important, those are relevant to the question, those are relevant to our problem, that the suffering. So we are going through a certain amount of suffering, that the questions that Buddha answered are directly relevant to the question. On the other hand, there are the 10 particular questions Buddha did not answer. Those are completely irrelevant to the problem. the problem of the suffering. So therefore, that we also need to understand, because sometimes that certain people are trying to take an entirely intellectual path, and they want to get answers to each and every problem, each and every question, and sometimes very difficult to answer also. And finding out everything included inside the Buddhist teaching is also not easy. Now, say someone is asking about the cosmos and how many suns are there, how many planets are there, or what the Buddha has mentioned about that. So many questions can be asked by someone, and one can take different today's topics like say psychology or modern psychology, adult psychology, different topics, and one can try to get some answers from the Buddha's teaching. Certain amount of answers you might find, but at the same time they might not have every answer, because Buddha's main focus is not that to give a comprehensive answer to all the questions. Rather, his main focus is to give us a path, tell us a path, show us the path, so that we too can penetrate this whole suffering. So that is the main focus that Buddha is having. So that is why that he has emphasized. That is how he encouraged. So that is the path we need to continue. So that was what we were discussing here. And even even when someone is categorically asking the Buddha that please answer these questions, otherwise I am going to disrobe, still Buddha was not going to answer them. Okay, Saman, we can proceed.
Yeah, Bhante. From the foregoing, it should be clear that in early Buddhism, we have the unique phenomenon of the enlightened dialectical awareness, paving the way for a down-to-earth ethical consciousness, far from undermining spiritual values by encouraging vain sophistry. It reasserted their importance by elevating experience above the theoretical knowledge. The pragmatic reasons given by the Buddha with regard to his preaching of the Four Noble Truths in categorical terms should not be taken as a mere edifying call to practice the Dhamma. In view of Buddha's attitude towards the totality of concepts as such, we may say that pragmatism is the only justification for his preaching those noble truths. Words have a value only to the extent that they indicate elements of experience. However, even when their words fail, experience triumphs. By defining voidness in terms of experience, early Buddhism also pointed out that what is void as to concepts is not devoid of happiness. A discussion of the goal of spiritual endeavors in Buddhism in philosophical terms, so as to mean the utter cessation of the world of concepts, might sometimes give the impression that there we have the dismal prospect of a mental vacuity. Hence it is that the Buddha, towards the end of a philosophical discourse on the gradual attainment of the cessation of perceptions and sensations, forestalls a possible objection by Potthapada and reassures him of the positive experiential content of happiness characteristic of that attainment.
One moment, Saman. Can you little go up?
Yeah.
A little bit more.
Bhante, over here.
Okay, fine. Now, a good point actually, Buddha, or rather Venerable Katapunda Thero points out. So why Buddha particularly point out the emphasis to noble truths, Four Noble Truths? Because that is directly talking about the suffering. The first noble truth is about suffering. Second noble truth is about the cause of suffering. The third noble truth is the cessation of suffering. And the fourth is actually the path leading to the cessation of suffering. So the more one is developing this path, more and more one should be able to land in the cessation of suffering. on the other hand, we can say previously we were suffering, but now not suffering. So on the other words, we can say, so you are leading towards happiness. Previously, there were much suffering, much unhappiness. As a result of the practice, ultimately you are more getting closer and closer to the happiness. So the result is actually the happiness, but what is currently maybe someone is experiencing maybe suffering. So sometimes people criticize that Buddha is talking about the suffering, but when someone is carefully understanding, he may see, yes, there is suffering, there is an evidence that there is suffering, but at the same time, Buddha is talking about a path to abandon that suffering, to be free. So the freed mind, unattached mind, is not a sorrowful, lamenting type of mind, but rather it's a more comfortable, satisfied, contented, happy type of a mind. So that is also a kind of a good sign that we need to keep it in our mind. Therefore, the path slowly has to take us to a kind of a contentment, a simplicity, unburdening, and loosening the bonds, loosening the grasping, so that one may have the clarity of the mind, one may have the calmness, the tranquility, also the wisdom. So likewise, so we are moving forward that kind of a positive area, abandoning the more type of suffering. That is something that we need to keep in our mind. And on the other hand, as Katukunda Thero points out, so sometimes people are too critical, telling that all the concepts are to be abandoned. All the concepts are utterly useless, and you need to abandon all the concepts. So they take a kind of an extremist view. They have kind of a problem with the concepts. At the same time, Buddha also, or this Katukunda Thero also points out the issue with the concepts, but in a more wise way. You maybe make use of the concepts even during your vipassana in your practice, but slowly, ultimately, all the concepts may start fading away. Still, one can use them. There is no prohibition. There is no any issue in using the concepts, but there are limits. You know how to keep them aside again and again, keeping the mind unbounded or keeping the mind completely freed. So the concepts are essential part of our thinking. So in order to think, we need concepts. Say, for example, you may be in front of your laptop or a computer. So this computer or laptop is a kind of a name, a concept which is given. But if we disassemble this laptop, there are various parts. There may be large parts like screen, keyboard, maybe mouse pad. Inside there's a CPU, there's some memories. So these are also little components. But if someone is further analyzing, there are even little components. So likewise, so if we go deeper, ultimately we can't find a laptop. So what we have is an assembly of so many little components. Ultimately, we have given a name called a laptop. So similarly, all these so-called people, man, woman, brother, sister, daughter, son, all are actually kind of concepts. What is actually are available are, we can say, maybe 5 aggregates, maybe 18 elements. So different ways that we can analyze. But for our easy communication, we simply have given them names and we have objectified them, we have personified them. Now we have persons, now we have objects. But it doesn't mean that we are denying all these concepts and we are kind of in angry with the concepts. We know their limits, we know their purpose. At the same time, we should have the capacity to penetrate them rather than being trapped in the concepts and taking concepts as the utter truth. One should be able to penetrate that and reach the kind of a more subtle kind of an understanding. So that will help us to further understand the Buddha's teaching. So there may be a situation where even though you see things, your mind is not conceptualizing. Say, for example, you are looking at some faraway object. Assume that it may be a coconut tree, it may be a beach side, it may be a waterfall, or it may be the sky or whatever. But your mind can be kept without conceptual proliferation. Typically, when we see something, we start thinking. We start agitated, we become agitated, we start thinking, we connect it to the past, we connect it to the future. We feel completely overwhelmed. We feel completely under the influence of conceptual proliferation. So that is how the concepts are kind of disturbing us. But there may be an instance, even though you see, mind doesn't want to proliferate. Mind doesn't want to do any prapancha. Mind doesn't want to get involved. Still the seeing is going on, but mind is not involved. Mind is at peace, so we can say at stillness. So this is a kind of a practically possible path. That's what the Venerable Katakunda Thero is pointing out. Sometimes these kind of experience are very difficult to explain. The words can't reach there. But the experience can reach there. So that's the beauty. So if we are trying to verbalize everything, explain everything using words, then it will be very difficult because the words, the concepts have limitations. But on the other hand, the experience is going even beyond that. I mean, it is not a rare thing that you may come to certain situations that you may be practicing, you may be sitting, and once you come out of your sitting, it's very difficult to communicate that, very difficult to explain what you have experienced. There are no words, there are no sufficient words to explain that experience. So such things are not rare. You also might have gone through such experiences. So the experience is there. You can actually attain that. You can actually experience that. But to explain that, you can't find proper words. So therefore, it is quite a valid point that Katakunda Thero is pointing out here. So the words still fail, but the experience triumphs. You can still experience something, but the words might fail there. Words can't explain that. I can remember that Bhante Dhammajiva used to say about Taoism that the Tao which is expressible is not the eternal Tao. This is a kind of a statement by Lao Tzu, where he's saying, so what is expressible is not the eternal Tao. So what is more deep, which may be experienced, but very difficult to express. We can little move forward. Saman,
Yeah, Bhante.
actually this the important part that we are now also going to realize is that the kind of a statement made to Pottapada, and we'll look into that as well.
Yeah, Bhante. Now it may well be, Pottapada, that you think evil dispositions may be put away, the dispositions that tend to purification may increase. One may continue to see the face to face and by himself come to realize the full perfection and grandeur of wisdom. But one may continue sad. Now that, Pottapada, would not be accurate judgment. When such conditions are fulfilled, then there will be joy and happiness and peace, and in continual mindfulness and self-mastery, one will dwell at ease. We have already seen how Chula Sunyata Sutta put across the same idea in negative terms, which help of the word dharata, but by far the most edifying of all attempts to suggest the positive experiential content of Nibbana is the use of the lotus metaphor. The whole philosophy of the transcendence of the world, which we have earlier stated in paradoxical terms, finds fuller expression through the lotus motif. Udabindu yathapi pokkare, padume vari yatta nalippati. Evam muni nopalippati. Yadidam ditta sutamuttu
Ditta Muttesu.
Even as a drop of water on the lotus leaf does not smear it, or as water smears not the lotus flower, so aloof is the sage who does not cling to whatever he has seen, heard, or sensed. Yehi vivitto vichareya loke nathani ughaya vadeya nago. Ilambujam kantakam varijam yatta jalena pamhena chanu palittam. Eva muni santi vado agiddo kamecha lokecha anupalitto. Being detached from whatever weaves, one wanders forth in this world. The perfect one does not enter into dispute grasping them. Even as the white lotus sprung up in the water, with its thorny stalk is not soiled by water and mud, even so the sage who professes peace and is free from avarice is not soiled by sense desires and by the world.
Yeah, one moment. Yeah, now this is a very good area. Can you go a little up, Sama?
Yeah.
So this Pottapada Sutta is giving us a very interesting situation where Buddha is giving a long discourse to the Pottapada, and after he was convinced, and then Buddha further points out, telling that now it may well be Pottapada that you think evil dispositions may be put away. The dispositions that tend to purification may increase. One may continue to see face to face and by himself come to realize the full perfection and grandeur of the wisdom. But one may continue sad. Now this is something, some kind of a conditioning that we may have. Now say for example, you yourself may be practicing now. So you are getting up early, you are going to the Parayanka, the sitting session, you may be conducting the walking session, and you are maybe getting involved with some reading, hearing, all that. And probably you might have even reached certain amount of progress. Sometimes you may be able to maintain your mind without any attachment, but still there may be a wrong tendency in the mind telling, oh, this life is not so beautiful. This is a bit sad. I don't have any motivation. I'm very much like abandoned. No one is loving me. No one is taking care of me. Or I am also not have much interest about the worldly affairs anymore. So I don't have much happiness. So this kind of a negative mentality is a kind of a possible tendency in the mind. But now Buddha pointing out, you need to understand, so what you are experiencing is a positive experience, a positive mental experience. As I used to say, emptiness is not so empty. Emptiness is a rich place. Emptiness is a really rich experience. So you are freeing your mind from defilements, you are freeing your mind from agitation, you are freeing your mind from restlessness, you are freeing your mind from delusion, and you are more and more become confident, you are more and more become tranquil, wise, and these are the positive qualities of the emptiness, for example. But if we simply say the face value of the word emptiness, you might feel negative, you might feel kind of barren, you might feel vacuum, something like that. But as Buddha points out here, you need to understand, okay, now the positive qualities are developing, and the negative qualities, the akusala, unwholesome qualities are now slowly fading away. As a result of that, the joy is arising, the happiness is arising, the peace is developing, the kind of you're mastering yourself, you are no more a victim of your old habit patterns. So we need to understand that positive qualities, positive aspects, then only we are fairly convinced. Because otherwise, we too might feel kind of lethargic, or we too might feel a little dry. like lost, not having any motivation, not having any fun, not having any joy. So all these things are possible. But as Buddha points out to Pottapada here, we need to little convince ourselves where we are moving forward. What we need to understand. So what are the things that we already achieved? So likewise, we need to appreciate our experience, our practice. So that is some important thing. And again, at last, with the point here, the Katun Thero is pointing out a very beautiful simile of the lotus. And in one sense, the lotus is actually getting some nutrition from the mud, but it is not in the mud now. So the lotus has come out, it is blossomed outside, and it's really beautiful. It is with a lot of fragrance. So therefore, our minds are also like that. We may be associating various difficulties. We may be going through various hardships, but that is where we are getting some nutrition so that we are blossoming, so that our mind become more and more purified. Okay, with that, I like to conclude today's the book reading, and now I like to open the session for discussion.
Answer is answer. We have 3 questions today.
Yeah. Right.
We also have one remaining question from last time that I sent as an email. I'm not sure if Saina's had any time to look at that one.
Yeah. I think I went through it, Chamila. Yeah, we'll proceed. I think I can remember that question.
Okay, Saina. Actually, just got another one. So we have 4 questions now. Question number 1 is a general question. Dear Venerable Bhante, I follow your instructions and practice meditation at least 5 days a week. Mostly I focus on Kayanupassana and Vedananupassana. It is very hard to achieve a state of no thoughts. Can you briefly explain how one can attain Nirvana by following Satipatthana? With metta, that's the end of the question.
Actually, this is sometimes explained in detail. So rather than I am giving a kind of a short answer, please read a few books. Like say, if you are able to read or access the internet, you can download the Ekayana Marga, the Sinhala Satipatthana Sutta, which I have compiled. It has 18 sermons which are explaining in detail about Satipatthana Sutta. And again, Buddha pointed out that you are able to achieve a very free type of mind, unattached mind, independent mind. So that is very much like the reference for us to continue our path. That is very much like the deeper, the island that we can prepare so that the floods of the defilements may not attack us, may not disturb us. So if we are able to maintain such a position, such a place, such refuge, slowly we can abandon the old habit patterns. We can abandon all our defilements. So we can't say immediately we are attaining the full-fledged Nibbana, but at least now we know the path. At least now we have some confidence. So that is the kind of short answer now I like to give.
Question number 2.
Chamila, one moment. You sent me that email through your private account or something else?
No, Sanas, I sent it through Mindfulness for Young Adults. Email.
Right. Okay.
Question number 2 of 4. This again a general question. Dear Bhante, we have heard that Dhamma friends or Kalyana Mitta is so important to the spiritual path. How can we verify if someone we are following is the right Kalyana Mitta? With metta, that's the end of the question.
That's a very good question, by the way. And that's why, how to answer? Actually, you have now good reference to the Buddha's teaching. So you don't need to blindly follow a teacher. You can always go back and see what the teacher has mentioned and what the Buddha has mentioned. So you always have the facility to verify. So if something that the teacher is telling completely contradicting to the Buddha's teaching, then of course the teacher has probably misunderstood something, or sometimes might have wrong view. So those things are possible. But on the other hand, if the teacher is emphasizing the Buddha's teaching, if he is explaining the Buddha's teaching properly, correctly, practically, then of course you can find out, yes, he's a good teacher, he himself has practiced. He's not merely explaining the book, rather he's talking from experience. So these things that slowly you can understand. So therefore I admit that very difficult to find a teacher and very difficult to recognize, very difficult to verify. But we always can use the Buddha's teaching to verify. So I therefore like to recommend, so don't totally depend on the person, rather look at the content, understand the Dhamma, and you start developing your own practice. And slowly, if the teaching is correct, or if the guidance given by the teacher is correct, slowly you may understand, okay, I also have now practiced several years, for example, and I am also now having certain amount of mindfulness, certain amount of wisdom, certain amount of concentration. Now I can understand what's really going on. So you yourself can do the verification now. So therefore it is not anymore a blind belief, rather you have some evidence and you are a living example to the Buddha's teaching, and it is not a superficial belief now, rather you yourself can understand, yes, that what teacher has mentioned is correct, but Buddha also has mentioned the same thing, and I myself is experiencing part of it. So that should be a very good, mature kind of a verification.
Question number 3 of 4. This is a general question. Can you please explain in detail how to forget and heal bad past memories, decisions made, so that it will not bother in the present moment? That's the end of the question.
Yeah, actually, they may come up again and again to our mind as regrets, as kind of restlessness, what we call as the uddacha kukuccha, regretting about what has happened. But more and more you do the practice. So during the practice session, you might find that the mind is happy, mind is contented, mind is going through some kind of unworldly kind of happiness. On such occasion, just very much like experience that. Don't pollute it with various other doubts. Rather, allow the mind to get healed. So basically, uddacha kukuccha, the restlessness and worry, is there because our mind has a tendency to go to the negativity always. It's a kind of it's a birth time mistake in a way. We all humans are sharing some kind of a mistake happen during our birth, that we are not thinking positively, rather we tend to think negatively. And we take little things more serious, particularly where we went wrong more serious, and we start accusing us, we start criticizing us, we start regretting about what has happened. But what has happened has already happened. You might have learned a lesson. So you learn the lesson, but now you need to take a different path, encourage yourself, and further develop the mindfulness, and the mindfulness practice help you to understand all these grievances, all these regrets, ruminations happening time to time. And then you have a better solution, because rather than allowing the mind to go and linger in these different ruminations, probably you can recognize it and avoid that path, avoid that vicious cycle. So to minimize mental proliferation, to minimize ruminations, obsessions, actually mindfulness practice is a really good remedy. It may take little time. Don't worry. If you keep practicing, you may come to a situation where mind become very calm, very relaxed, almost like no thinking. Actually, previously also someone has asked whether we are able to achieve a mind which is completely silent. Yes, it is possible. And even not through a kind of a deep vipassana, even before that, you might experience kind of a deep calmness, kind of tranquility, a thoughtless moment. So these things are possible things, and many people are experiencing that. Not only I am advocating that, but many people are experiencing that, and you have a lot of evidence. If you refer some question and answer sessions happen at Nissarana, you can see how many yogis are explaining that they are experiencing a very silent mind, non-proliferative mind. So these things are possible things. And as we are progressing, so these regrets also become less and less. So just trust your own self, just trust your practice, continue the path. So these things are possible to achieve.
Question number 4 of 4. This is a mindful sitting question. Dear Venerable Sir, during this morning's 1-hour meditation, my focus quickly settled on the rising and falling of the breath. Then I started to feel body sensations, mostly inside my mouth, like a strong force generating there. After that, I experienced alternating coolness and heat through the upper part of my body. Throughout the session, I could hear a very intense sound in my ear. Whenever my mind got distracted from unnecessary feelings, I naturally focused on that sound without any difficulty. Appreciate your guidance to improve my meditation. With metta, that's the end of the question.
So as far as I understood the question, Chamila, now he's talking about a kind of a sound. It may be an ongoing sound. So when the mind gets distracted, he is using that sound to again come back to the practice, again earth himself. Am I correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then not a big, it may be a kind of a useful thing. Typically what happens is sounds are very much like distraction for many people, and they start complaining, okay, you are making a sound, I get distracted, so don't make any sound, don't make any noise. But for you, it has happened differently. So you are able to use the sound properly, positively, to avoid the distraction. So this may be an ongoing sound, but you are using it in a positive way. So therefore, no problem. So iti ajjattang va kaye kayanupassee vihirati, iti bahidda va kaye kayanupassee vihirati. So you can use even the bahidda, you can use even the external object. If you are capable of using that properly, wisely, you can go ahead. No harm.
That is the last question from this session.
Yeah. Actually, I found the question that you raised related to the niyamas, actually. Last time someone has asked about niyama and how it is connected with the Patissamuppada. Actually, we can't say that all the niyamas represent the Patissamuppada. We can say, in general, Patissamuppada talks about the dependency, that there is no phenomena completely independent, everything is dependent. So that is one basic principle of the Patissamuppada. And there are no any phenomena, any conditioned phenomena which is completely independent. Everything depends on something else. May not be just one thing, there may be many things on which the other things are connected, or the other things are dependent. So we can't find anything which is completely independent. So that if we take that as the basic principle, then of course we can say Utu niyama, bija niyama, chitta niyama, kamma niyama, dhamma niyama, all are having some relevance to the Patissamuppada. But on the other hand, if we take the kind of the chain of actions that Buddha is talking about, avidya pacca sankhara, sankhara pacca vijnana, vijnana pacca nama rupa, like that only happens in the mind. You can't expect that to happen in all the niyamas. But this expression, this way of formulation, this way of procedure happening within the mind. So when the mind is deluded, going through some ignorance, then the formations can happen, and then the establishment of the consciousness, all that are there. So then we can connect it to a more kind of Chitta Niyama and Kamma Niyama. And other than that, Uttu Niyama, Bija Niyama, Dhamma Niyama, these are more general type of laws. Say, for example, Uttu Niyama. Say, someone can say conventionally, okay, the sun rises from the east. As the sun rises, maybe the say the whole world become illuminated, and different seasons are there, and this is the time periods of the season. Now these things are very much like the physical laws happening in the world. So they are typically called as the Uttaniyama. And then there are biological laws. Now when you are putting growing say planting a mango seed, you will get a mango plant. So this is mere Bija Niyama. And the Dhamma Niyama are very much the causal laws, and that also we can include into the Parissamuppada. Kamma Niyama, as we all can understand, they are the very much the moral laws. Chitta Niyama are more into the psychological type of laws. And connecting all that with the Parissamuppada is a question. And certain parts may be able to explain, but certain parts might not be able to explain. Back to you, Chamila.
Yes, so that is the end of the questions for today. But before we end the program, I would like to make an announcement about the tour for the Australian tour starting next week. I will share in the chat window. Someone has created a file with the just screen. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see.
Suranga, are you able to share the screen? Because,
yeah.
You can share the PowerPoint. I have a file about the. Just want to inform everyone about so Swaminathan is arriving in Australia next Tuesday and be for about 40 days, and there'll be sessions in different locations, starting with Brisbane, and then Sydney. Everybody can see the shared presentation. So these are the times, and we will be using the same link, the Zoom link, to broadcast the Q&A and Dhamma sermons of all these sessions. Surang, if you can drop the PDF also into the chat window. We have a PDF of these dates and times, so you can follow it if you are able to join them. So we will have the Q&A and Dhamma sermon of each location, and as well as in the Sydney retreat, we have a special desana at Lankarama Temple. Everybody in Sydney can actually attend that session as well. And also we are hoping to broadcast it through Zoom as well. And the dates and times for Melbourne and Perth are yet to be confirmed. The dates are confirmed, but the times for Melbourne and Perth are yet to be confirmed. But it will be similar times, and we can share those times with you as well. So, Sarnas, you would like to add anything?
No, nothing to add, Chamila. I also don't know the exact times, as you said, so it might vary from place to place.
And from beginning,
Probably you can update the group once you receive the link and the time.
yes, and also daylight saving time also happens first week of April. So the times, the current time sessions with Sri Lanka will change the difference in time, but the ones in the screen are the finalized ones. So those ones we've incorporated the daylight saving also into the schedule. So those will be the relevant
when the daylight saving starts?
First week of April.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we can end the program there. To end the program, we'd first like to thank Bhante for his valuable time, even with the busy schedule at the monastery. To all the supporters of this program, both seen and unseen, and to all the participants for joining today to practice and share their questions. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thero Saranai.
Thero Saranai.
Anyone didn't get a chance to get that PDF, drop a note to Suranga and we will send you the file.